Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to explore the fascinating millennial-long struggle to build the clocks and calendars we interact with every single day. We take time completely for granted, don't we? We glance at our wrists or our phones without a second thought. But taming time, literally forcing the messy, chaotic reality of the cosmos into neat, predictable little boxes, was actually one of humanity's absolute greatest quests. To kick things off, I want you to think about a very specific and, frankly, completely bizarre number. 445. So why on earth was the year 460 BC exactly 445 days long? It creates an immediate mystery, right? But before we can actually understand why an entire year in human history had to be artificially stretched out like a rubber band, we need to rewind time a bit. We're going all the way back to ancient Egypt to see how humans first even began to divide up the day. Part 1. Dividing the daily cycle. It's wild how fast the mechanical evolution of telling time actually happened. As civilizations grew more complex thousands of years ago, they desperately needed to organize their societies, their trade, and their religious rituals. Around 3500 BCE, the Egyptians were building these towering obelisks. And they weren't just decorative monuments. Their moving shadows formed massive sundials to slice the morning from the afternoon. By 1500 BCE, things got smaller and much more personal with portable shadow clocks. Then the quest for precision hit the nighttime hours. Around 600 BCE, the Egyptian Merkhet let astronomers track hours by aligning with the pole star. And finally, by 325 BCE, the Greeks were using clepsydras, or water thieves, which were basically stone vessels dripping water at a constant rate to meticulously measure time in total darkness. If you boil all of those ancient marvels down to their core engineering, whether it's a huge stone obelisk or a dripping bowl of water, every single clock basically needs two things. Number one, a constant or repetitive process to mark equal increments, like the sun moving across the sky or water flowing downward. And number two, a way to track those increments, like notches carved into a vessel. But here is the huge catch. These physical inventions were fantastic for tracking daily hours, but they were utterly useless for tracking the broader passing of the seasons. Which brings us to a much larger astronomical puzzle. Part 2. Birth of the calendar. So the tropical year, which is the precise time it takes the Earth to orbit the sun and return to the exact same position in our cycle of seasons, say from spring equinox to spring equinox, is a super messy 365.2422 days. The cosmos just doesn't care about our math. It is not a neat, round number that human beings can easily count or divide perfectly into even months. And man, does this create some serious friction between our human desire for clean counting and pure astronomical reality. Ancient cultures loved looking at the moon to track time, right? But a standard 12-month lunar year is only about 354.36 days long. Compare that to the tropical solar year of roughly 365.24 days, and you are left with a drastic 11-day mismatch every single year. Now, this isn't just some abstract math problem, it's a literal survival problem. If you just let a purely lunar calendar run without fixing it, within a few decades, your vital summer harvest festivals would be happening in the dead of winter. So, how did ancient mathematicians force the moon to match the sun without everything drifting into chaos? Let's get into part 3, the Metonic cycle. They figured out what's basically an astronomical cheat code. It's called the Metonic cycle. Named after Meton of Athens back in the 5th century BC, this is a period of almost exactly 19 years, or 6,940 days, after which the phases of the moon magically line up at the exact same time of the solar year. To make this work, ancient astronomers brilliantly bridged the gap by taking a standard 12-month lunar calendar and just inserting a 13th leap month into 7 of those 19 years. The math behind this is absolutely staggering for antiquity, and it completely revolutionized ancient life. Check this out. 19 tropical years is equal to exactly 235 synodic months, with a difference of just 2 hours, 4 minutes, and 58 seconds over that entire 2-decade span. I mean, that is wildly precise. It successively synchronized calendars for the Babylonians, the Greeks, and the Hebrews, allowing them to keep their months tied to the moon, while anchoring their years firmly to the life-giving seasons. But, as is usually the case, human error eventually caused societal chaos anyway. This brings us back to the Romans, that mystery we started with, and part 4, the Julian calendar reform. Before Julius Caesar stepped in, the Romans relied on a really clunky 355-day year. To keep it aligned with the sun, officials called pontiffs were supposed to occasionally insert a 27-day month between February and March. But because this required direct human intervention, it became highly political and totally corrupt. Officials would strategically add days just to keep their political buddies in office longer, or maliciously withhold days to shorten their opponents' terms. Because the calendar was so heavily manipulated by human greed, the dates completely decoupled from the natural seasons. Julius Caesar knew he had to solve this drift permanently. And hey, this perfectly answers our opening question. To wipe the slate clean and catch the calendar back up to the actual position of the sun, Caesar instituted a massive, one-time 445-day year in 46 BC. By stretching the year with multiple extra months all at once, he just brute forced the calendar back into alignment. It was so incredibly disruptive for the citizens of Rome that it literally became known in history as the last year of confusion. Caesar's permanent solution was to just throw out that easily manipulated 355-day system entirely and standardize a 365-day year. To handle the fraction of a day required by the tropical year, he instituted an automatic leap day every 4 years. This meant the calendar year now averaged 365.25 days. It was a total game changer because it removed human meddling and political corruption completely. From then on, the Roman calendar basically just ran on autopilot. But unfortunately for Julius Caesar, his math was still slightly off. Let's dive into Part 5, the Gregorian correction. Remember that messy decimal? The actual tropical year is 365.2422 days. So Caesar's 365.25 average was just a tiny bit too long, by about 11 minutes every single year. Now, that doesn't seem like a big deal in a human lifetime, sure, but those 11 missing minutes compounded relentlessly over the centuries. By the year 1582, the calendar had drifted by 10 full days, throwing the celebration of Easter, which was historically tied to the spring equinox, into a full-blown religious and seasonal crisis. Pope Gregory XIII had to intervene with a fix that absolutely bends the mind. He literally erased 10 days from history. To snap the calendar back to where it belonged, 10 days were simply omitted from the month of October in 1582. Citizens literally went to sleep on Thursday, October 4th, and woke up the very next morning on Friday, October 15th. But the genius part? To prevent total global pandemonium, the weekly 7-day cycle wasn't interrupted at all. Thursday was still followed by Friday, even though the date itself jumped by over a week. To stop the drift from ever happening again, Pope Gregory heavily nuanced the leap year rule. The old Julian rule was simple but flawed, right? Just a leap year every 4 years. The new Gregorian leap rule is incredibly precise. A year is a leap year if it's exactly divisible by 4, except for century years exactly divisible by 100, unless they're exactly divisible by 400. So, for example, under this new rule, the year 1900 was not a leap year, but the year 2000 was. This tiny, brilliant adjustment fixed the error so perfectly that our modern calendar won't drift noticeably from the seasons for another 100,000 years. So what you should really take away from all this is that despite these incredibly dramatic historical shifts, like making a single year 445 days long, or wiping 10 full days off the map overnight, no days or years were ever truly lost from human history. Time itself never skipped a beat. Humanity was simply and continually realigning our constructed artificial calendars back to the natural astronomical cycles of the Earth and the Sun. But because the cosmos is completely indifferent to our need for perfect, clean mathematics, we really have to wonder about the future. Our planet's orbit is a living, shifting dynamic, slightly altering over millennia. So, since no calendar can be absolutely perfect forever, when will our distant descendants be forced to step in, erase the confusion, and correct the clock all over again?